Here's my quote for you today. It doesn't matter what you're going through, what storms you face, or how deep the valley seems. As long as you don't quit, all will be fine in the end. Let's start with this truth. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter what storms you face. Those wild, unpredictable tempests that shake your world, rattle your plans, and leave you wondering if you'll ever see calm skies again. It doesn't matter how deep the valley seems, how far down you've fallen, how steep the walls look, how impossible the climb feels in this moment. None of that decides your fate. What decides it is this: as long as you don't quit, all will be fine in the end. That's not a wish or a hope. It's a principle. It's the foundation of every comeback, every triumph, every story worth telling. If you keep going, you win. If you don't quit, the storms pass, the valleys rise, and the struggles fade into lessons. That's the deal life offers you, and it's yours to take. Now let's talk about where you are right now. Maybe you're in a tough spot. Maybe the odds feel stacked against you. Doors closing, money tight, opportunities slipping through your fingers like sand. Maybe the resources are scarce, the support is thin, or the dreams you hold in your heart seem so far off you can barely see them anymore. I want you to hear this. It's not as bad as you think. It's not as bad as it could be. And as long as you're still breathing, still standing, still willing to take one more step forward, you've got everything you need to turn it around. You're not out of the game. You're not finished. You're just in a storm, just in a valley. And storms don't last forever. And valleys aren't bottomless. Life has a way of testing us. It throws challenges that feel personal, that hit us where it hurts, that make us question our strength, our worth, our future. But here's the reality. No matter what you're going through, no matter how fierce the storm rages, or how deep the valley sinks, your situation is not the end of the story. It's just a chapter. And the beauty of a chapter is that it's not the whole book. It's a piece, a part, a moment in a larger tale. You're still writing the pages. You're still holding the pen. You decide what comes next. The fact that you're here, alive, with a mind to think, a heart to feel, and a will to push on, means you've got the raw materials to build something better. It's not over. It's not as bad as it could be. It doesn't matter what you're facing. It only matters that you don't quit. Consider a girl named Clara. She grew up in a small village, miles from any city, where the dirt roads turned to mud with every rain, where hope seemed as scarce as the crops in a drought. Her family had little no electricity most days, no running water, just a shack that groaned under the weight of the wind. At 16, she lost her father, the only one bringing in money, and suddenly she was left with a mother too sick to work, and 3 younger siblings staring at her with hungry eyes. The village had no school beyond a few years, no jobs beyond scratching the earth, and no one to tell her she could rise above it. Most would have said her story was done, buried under the weight of loss, poverty, and isolation. But Clara didn't see it that way. She didn't quit. And that's why it didn't matter what she was going through, what storms battered her life, or how deep that valley of hardship stretched. She kept going, and all turned out fine in the end. Clara's days were brutal. She'd wake before the sun, tend the small patch of land they had, then walk 2 hours to a neighboring town just to sell a handful of vegetables for a few coins. She'd trudge home exhausted, her feet sore, her hands rough, with barely enough to keep the family from starving. But she kept going. She didn't have much, just her will, her hands, and a stubborn belief that it wasn't as bad as it could be. She was alive. Her family was alive. That was something, and something was enough to start with. It didn't matter that the storms of hunger and despair howled around her, or that the valley of her circumstances seemed endless. She didn't quit, and that made the difference. You might be in your own village right now. Maybe not a literal one, but a place where the walls feel close, the options feel few, and the storms of life feel relentless. Maybe you're looking at your life and thinking, how do I get out of this? How do I weather this downpour? How do I climb this pit? Look at Clara. She didn't have a map. She didn't have money or connections, but she had persistence. She started small. One day she overheard a merchant in town talking about a market 50 miles away, where goods fetched better prices. She didn't have a way to get there. No horse, no wagon, no easy path. So she saved every coin, borrowed a rickety cart that creaked with every turn, and taught herself to haggle with traders twice her age. It wasn't easy. The first trip took 3 days, her body aching, her spirit tested, and she barely broke even. But she went back, again and again. She didn't quit. It didn't matter how rough the journey, how fierce the setbacks, or how deep the doubt. She kept moving. And all was fine in the end. That's the key. Keep moving. Action is the antidote to despair. Clara could have sat in that village, stared at the dirt, and let the storms of her life drown her. Let the valley swallow her whole. But she didn't. She took a step. You don't have to solve everything today. You don't have to calm every storm, or climb every wall right now. But you do have to do something. Because every step you take is a signal to yourself that you're not done. It's a declaration that you're still in this. And as long as you're still in it, it's not as bad as it could be. It's not the end. It doesn't matter what you're going through. Loss, failure, fear. What matters is that you don't quit. Clara's story didn't turn around overnight. It took years. She'd fail sometimes. Crops would wither in the sun. The cart would break on a rocky path. Buyers would cheat her with a smile. But she learned. She got tougher. She started trading more than vegetables. Cloth from a torn sack, tools she bartered for, anything she could carry on her back. She taught herself to read from old newspapers she found, piecing together words late at night, by the flicker of a candle she could barely afford. She didn't have a teacher, but she had time and a will to use it. And slowly she built something. By her mid-20s, Clara wasn't just feeding her family. She was employing half the village, running a small trading business that brought life to that forgotten place. She'd made it out, not because the storm stopped or the valley vanished, but because she didn't quit. And all was fine in the end. You're tougher than you think. Clara didn't have some magic power you don't have. She had the same thing you've got. The will to keep going. That's all it takes. The will to say, I'm not quitting. Not today. And that's available to you right now. It doesn't cost a dime. It doesn't require permission. It's yours to claim. Whatever you're facing, financial strain, a dead-end job, a dream that's slipping away, it's not as bad as it could be, because you've still got that will. You've still got a shot. It doesn't matter how loud the storm roars, or how deep the valley dips. As long as you don't quit, you'll come through. Think about it. It could be worse. You could be without hope entirely. You could be without the ability to fight back. But you're not. Clara wasn't. She had next to nothing. But she had her life, her mind, her hands. That was her foundation. What's yours? You've got something. A skill, a friend, a moment of clarity. That's enough. It's not as bad as it could be. Because you've got tools to work with. Use them. It doesn't matter what you're going through. What matters is that you keep going. The worst thing isn't what's happening to you. The worst thing is giving up on yourself. That's when it gets bad. Really bad. Clara could have given up when her father died. When the rains failed. When the road stretched too long. But she didn't. And because she didn't, she turned a shack in a village into a story of success. You can do that too. You're not helpless. You're not hopeless. You're just in a moment. A moment that will pass if you work through it. It doesn't matter how fierce the storm, or how deep the valley. As long as you don't quit, all will be fine. Discipline yourself to see the opportunity in every difficulty. Clara saw a market 50 miles away as a chance, not a burden. She saw a broken cart as a problem to solve, not a reason to stop. Train your mind to focus on what's possible, not just what's wrong. That's power. That's freedom. That's the ability to take any situation and say, this isn't as bad as it looks. I can handle it. It doesn't matter what you're going through. What matters is that you don't let it break you. Time is on your side. Clara didn't become successful in a week. She had time, years of it, and she used it. You've got time too. You don't have to rush. You don't have to panic. Just keep going. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one effort at a time. That's how Clara built her life. That's how you'll build yours. It's not about speed. It's about direction. And as long as you're pointed forward, you're on your way. It doesn't matter how long the storm lasts, or how deep the valley runs. As long as you don't quit, you'll reach the other side. Here are some action points to get you started. Straight from Clara's playbook. Assess what you have. Look around. What's in your hands right now? A skill, a contact, a small amount of money. Clara started with a handful of vegetables. Start with what you've got. Take one step today. Do something practical. Walk to that market. Make a call. Write a plan. Clara's first trip didn't make her rich, but it got her moving. Move. Learn as you go. You don't need to know everything. Clara taught herself to read from scraps. Pick up a book. Watch a video. Ask a question. Learn something today. Build on small wins. Clara turned pennies into a cart into a business. Take your first success, however small, and stack another on it. Don't stop when it gets hard, and it will. Remember Clara's 3-day trips. Keep going, rest if you must, but don't quit. So here's my challenge to you. Don't quit. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Clara didn't, and she went from a village shack to a life of purpose. You can too. Whatever you're going through, it's not as bad as it could be, because you're still here. You're still capable. You've got time, will, and a chance. It doesn't matter what storms you face. Poverty, doubt, failure, or how deep the valley seems. Loneliness, struggle, despair. As long as you don't quit, all will be fine in the end. That's the law of life, and you're living proof of it.